How's it going, everybody? And welcome to another amazing episode of Raw Rules as Written. I am one of your co-hosts, Matt, also known as Grape Ape.
And I'm Stefan Srod, or DM Bad Wrong Fun on a couple spots out there.
And I'm
Stefan, Bob tried to steal your seat last week.
I watched the show. I think you might be playing it up a little bit. Bob's always welcome.
Off air, you can ask Elena.
Oh.
Off air, Bob asked me
Okay.
to kick you off permanently and secure him. And I've got Elena as a witness.
I'll see him at Dungeon Con. We'll have words.
Stefan, we've got an amazing guest this evening. Charles Royston, co-founder of Death Guaranteed Games. Charles, if this is the first time people are meeting you, you prefer to be called Judge Cro. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you want the people to know.
Oh my gosh. So I teach. I'm a professor of counseling and human services in my day job. So it's a stretch to kill people on the weekends, but it's a good counter to this kind of like, I don't know, sensitive, compassionate, soft life that I live. And then it's like I get to throw on the horns and get into it and roll some dice. It's a good self-care activity for me. I think I got into publishing because my daughter, my youngest, decided to love the game. I tried with my oldest, I tried with my middle, and didn't quite work. But then my youngest took to it and had the best ideas, humbled me as a judge, and then so I thought, okay, I think we got something here. I want to really invest in this relationship and invest in this hobby even more. And then she came up with this idea for a cult themed module, and I decided to write it up. And as you both know from having me worked my angles to promote it, the Cult That Never Was a successful crowdfunding campaign because of that, and I was inspired by her and giving her something tangible to say we did that. That was pretty awesome. But I mostly play in the West Coast. I'm excited to finally get to Dungeon Con and play with some Midwest folks because I'm originally from Chicagoland, so it's going to be good to be back in the homeland.
All right. Yeah, I think that's super cool.
Show.
The dad-daughter duo. I would love to do that with my kids someday. That sounds like just such a fun way to bond and create something.
It is. I'd say 7 is the magic age to start.
All right. I got a couple more
years. Stefan's got a little one. So what was the key that got the youngest one going? So you can give it to Stefan.
Yeah. So it's funny that this is called a Rules as Written podcast. It's the worst way to approach a 7-year-old. You don't want to haggle. You don't want to haggle rules. You kind of want to let them just make up whatever, and then you roll dice almost kind of just to teach them that dice are supposed to be rolled. And pretty much it's a co-written story. You don't even need the dice really at that young age. You just kind of, oh well, this worked, this didn't work. Kind of you let the dice inform you, but you don't let the dice limit them. That's my best piece of advice. And then they end up loving it. And they get reeled in by the rules. My daughter wanted to play a wild shaping dragon. And I said no for a year or so, and then she threatened to never play the game again. So I found a way for her to wild shape as this teeny little dragonette wormling thing. You got to give in, wherever you can to keep them interested. So.
No, I'm pretty sure whenever I start gaming with my kid, he's going to be like, I want astronaut witches and slime monsters. And
dinosaurs.
Yeah, it's all going to be mixed up together. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to send him like stuff that he can do. I'm gonna be like, listen, do this to your dad. Ask him for this. Hit him up with that. Send him little clues. Stefan, we got to get busy. We got a lot of questions to get through. What's our first one?
Yeah, number 1, we're talking about the Scout, another one of the specialist subclasses, and we're going, how does the Scout's danger sense work?
Okay, and if I have been following along with the way you guys do this, I get to answer first?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, great. So I just want to say this. It's so cool because I beta tested XCrawl Classics and the Specialist wasn't even in there. So I love that you guys are focusing on the Specialist because this is the least known set of classes and it's so exciting. So the danger sense for the Scout, as you can imagine, the scout is the person who's going out trying to figure out what's going on. In a range of 60 feet, the scout can sense if there's anybody lurking, trying to slow their breath, trying not to let their, fidgety feet make a scratch on or a creak on the boards. It's like this person can tell if there's any other beings in the area with a successful roll, of course. They can't obviously tell if there's any sort of mechanical traps, but they can tell if there's people waiting and lurking. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. How do you make that check, Charles? Like if I'm playing the specialist and I'm playing a scout, if I say, "Hey, I want to make a danger sense check," what do you say after that?
Honestly, this is my biggest critique, and I wish there's a version 2 coming out to modify this. But I couldn't find anywhere that there's a modifier. It's just
it's
it's.
there. You looked at it describes it on page. Let me see, page 44. Danger sense got your description, but you got to go down to page 49 to look at the scouts. It's all listed out, kind of like the thief has their skills list out, and it's in there. So level 1 at +1, level 3 is +5.
But it does, yeah, but it doesn't allow a stat mod, right? Of intelligence.
Oh, I get what you
It
mean.
doesn't allow a stat mod.
Well,
And
to
maybe
me,
because it's intuition, I mean, I guess what would you put it at? Personality, maybe?
yeah,
Well,
that's a good question. But that to me that struck me as, oh wow, you really can't benefit from your stats on this one. So yes, it's a D20 roll plus your class bonus.
yeah, it
based
doesn't
on
have an
level.
asterisk or that little cross. None of the symbols there. So you're right. No stat
Right.
mod.
Let's look at what the rules say. Lane, if you could bring up handout 1A through C in succession. Page 44, the scout may call for a danger sense check to have a flash of intuition about concealed enemies within 60 feet of their position. Uh, Go on to say, and this should say page 44, but it says page 66, typo. When the judge determines that skill check needs to be made, the player rolls a d20 for a trained skill check. So like you said, we know it's a trained skill. Actually, this is page 66, so I was going to see what is a skill check. Because would you guys classify this as a skill, the danger sense?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think
And
all the
so
things that are listed out for each of the specialist classes, all those little things, those are each a skill.
I
I
agree with
agree.
that.
Handout 1C on page 50, that gives you the specialist skills by specialty. So for the scout, danger sense is listed. There's no asterisk or cross or double cross. So I went back to page 66 to figure out, well, is there a modifier? And so the player rolls the d20 plus appropriate modifiers as needed. There is listings for what you can use modifiers for, so you could make a house rule to add personality or something like that. But Stefan, if you were a judge, would you let him add level? Maybe. I mean, do
No,
you
I
see
mean
a
they're already getting the
reason?
bonus per each time they level up. If they want an extra bonus to this, and I feel like DC 10, 15, 20 and the bonuses they get, they're getting good bonuses. I don't think they're left wanting, but if they want something, I'm going to lean on magic items and sponsorships and stuff.
Ooh, that's good.
Oh, what's our next question? Hit Charles with the next one.
Yep. Next up, what is the limit? Is there any limit, actually? Not what is there a limit to how many times a scout can use their danger sense?
Not as written. It seems unlimited.
Eh,
And yeah, I couldn't find anything.
so
So
this one,
yeah,
you gotta kind of look back at what is the skill. So if it's a skill, that means it's dictated by action dice, right?
Mm-hmm.
okay.
So if Elena, if we bring up handout 2A on page 41, action dice, specialists use their action dice for attacks and skill checks. So the amount of times you could do it would be limited by your action dice, right? Now,
Makes sense.
it doesn't say in the book though. So if we call it a skill, then you'd have to use an action dice for it. If it's just an intuition, could it be added to a movement like pulling a torch out or sheathing or unsheathing a weapon. Charles, where do you stand on that?
Well, you're talking about as if it's already in initiative order, and mostly the scout is going to do things right before initiative order, it seems like. So it's almost unstructured, this skill. So it's an interesting question. I think that it would depend on certainly if there's an imminent initiative order coming, they get one chance to sense it, and then boom, something happens, and then they don't get a chance. But then I think, I don't know, if I was to rule it, I would say that maybe even every uh, whatever their movement speed is, if they had 20 feet of movement, 30 feet of movement, then every 20 feet they could check again. I think that would make sense.
What do you
I
think?
would instead be ruling that like they can do it once per, hey, that I want to know if there's some danger around that corner. They can roll once for doing that. If they can just keep on rolling because they're like, ooh, I know I rolled a 5, or hey, maybe the judge should be rolling these. You don't know. I think that'd be a perfectly fair ruling because they don't really, that may narratively for how danger sense works. I think that would be perfectly fair to call. But if they can just keep rolling, like we're going back to like the 3.5, you can just take 20 on this, just take all the time you need. That's not the situation we're in. We're in X crawl. We need things to be fast paced. We're on for 2 hours tonight with commercial breaks. Well, you can't just take all that time. Like people got to get home. They're leaving the stadiums. The babysitter's gonna have to get paid overtime if you make this take too long. So no, I don't think you have time to just like be doing it constantly. Do it once per situation, and you get what you get. And if you wanted it to be higher, should have used some mojo or should have used some luck.
And so maybe a happy medium, Charles is saying you can use it for every movement, and Stefan's saying, kind of once per encounter. Maybe a happy medium is if you want to spend your action dice and you want to use that whole action to do it, then that's what you can do. That is, it'll be interesting to hear Brendan and what he thinks on that. What it was intended, on how many times you can use it. Because rules is written, the way it's written in the book, I would let them use it as many times as they want. But that's kind of their action. So they would be a great radar for everything. I mean, you can only find so much hidden stuff, right? But Stefan, you're right. They do have to beat a certain DC. So how much do you let intuition rule? Well, let's dive into our third question, see if we can wrap all these things up.
For sure. Yeah. Number 3, how specific or generalized is the info gathered from Danger Sense?
Charles, Stefan makes a danger sense check. He rolls. He succeeds. What kind of information are you going to give?
I kind of already said that in the first prompt. The sense of creatures, the sense of breathing, humanoid types, but not anything mechanical, not any pit traps, or you got to call the the dwarven mechanic for a pit trap.
All right, so handout 3A, if you would please, Elena. Page 44. The scout rolls against a hard DC 10 for creatures using simple concealment. So we know we don't have any adjustment modifier. We do have the static bonus that you get from the skills. So 10 isn't that hard. Simple concealment. Charles, how do you define simple concealment from the DC 15 of careful concealment or camouflaged?
I mean, we've all seen those movies where somebody's just literally hiding behind a door or a wall, right? That's simple. But
They're
if
standing
somebody's
next to a mannequin.
right,
Yeah.
but if somebody's in a cardboard box or behind a stairwell or something that's not going to naturally get your eye to fall on it in a scan when you're swiveling, I would say would be the 15.
Evan, what do you think? What's the difference between simple concealment and camouflaged or careful concealment?
Uh, yeah, I think of playing hide and seek with my toddler. Simple concealment is he's under a table, behind a curtain. Like, that that's honestly where my mind goes to these days with simple concealment. Yeah, camouflaged is the orc is in a ghillie suit. The orc is, uh arrange something very carefully to blend in with the natural environment, not just he dove behind a couch.
Okay. Landon, if you could bring up handout 3B for us. If successful, the scout knows that a threat exists and its approximate location, not precisely what the threat is. So let's say they're hiding inside a pirate ship, right? You've got a couple. There was an X-Crawl adventure that we played where there was a pirate ship that you had to get through the other side, and you got the pirates up top. But let's say there's people inside the pirate ship. Now, the pirate ship's going to give off a sense of danger already, but if you use this danger sense, what kind of more information do you give them? I mean, the pirate ship's 60 feet away. Do you tell them like, pretty sure there's a big threat inside? How much? How much do you give them, Charles?
No, I think they don't even need to check to kind of expect it, especially in X crawl. So I like to give them something so it doesn't feel like a kind of a womp womp. I already knew that. So I might say something like, depending on how well they rolled or how well they beat the DC, I might say, well, you sense at least one body, lurking within 10 feet of that door right there, or more than 5 bodies, or you sense a crouched person ready to leap, that kind of thing. I might give them just that one more satisfying tidbit of detail.
Yeah, you heard a sneeze from over there, and you heard four very polite bless yous from over there.
Yeah. or more likely 4 very sharp shut up.
Yeah, that is perfect. All right, so I mean, go ahead, Stefan. Did you have something else?
I mean honestly, something along with that of like some bit of maybe a head pop up, or like you heard like an unhuman burp. Like this is like got to be some really large creature. You're not sure it could, but something that you'd be like, that's I heard an ogre burp in a bar once. It was a really sketchy bar, and it sounded like that. So you give them a hint like that of like kind of the size of the creature, just enough to foreshadow and cause that bit of tension that you probably want to have in your game.
Oh yeah.
All right. And Handout 3C goes on to say that it doesn't work against mechanical or magic traps, and even traps that release or summon creatures. So, I mean, has to be a creature, so I guess undead would fall into that. I was going to say warm-blooded, but, undead constructs maybe, and it has to be hidden. So, Stefan, where do you draw the limit? If it's behind like 2 rooms, let's say you got to go through this series of 3 doors or whatever. If it's, behind 2 rooms, do you give them a danger sense if it's within 60 feet?
Oh, like, just, hey, we're at the next door. Danger sense, the next room is within 60 feet of us. Yeah, I could see it being abused like that. I'm not sure if it's abused or working as intended. I would allow it within 1 room away, I think.
I would actually allow it. I would allow it within 60 feet period, but then I would just change the DC based on how many doors in between. And honestly, if you think about it in game, you got a bunch of troglodytes hanging around two rooms away. They don't probably think that they need to be as quiet. So maybe they are hushed whispers, 2 rooms away, and that's something that a danger sense. I mean, the scout is not incredibly valuable in battle. Their main benefit is utility. So I keep thinking, like, how do you keep a character engaged? You got to give them what their character class is best at. So if they're going to do it, if they're going to try it, I say give it to them.
Yeah, that's a great point. They are masters of stealth and hiding, but that danger sense is their main gig. And so I guess noteworthy to say that goes on to talk about a little bit of increased weapon damage. We didn't bring it up, but the short bow does D8 and the sling does D6. So I was very happy to see more weapons get some extra backstab damage. Yeah.
It's funny that you brought that up, because I have, for each specialist class that we're going over, I have an extra thing that I put an asterisk on that you didn't ask about, that I thought was pretty special, and it was the ranged backstab. At short range backstab, up the dice chain damage bonus. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that is pretty awesome. I didn't add it because Elena would be even more mad than she is now. I had to cap myself. Stefan, what's our next question?
Absolutely. Next up, we wrapped up the danger sense here. What about the mojo? What's the scout's mojo earning condition?
Well, Matt, like you were saying, that this is the scout's bread and butter. So for every time they succeed at discovering a trap or an ambush, they can earn mojo. Will earn mojo.
Would you consider an ambush a trap?
I mean, it's trap, comma, ambush. So apparently there's a distinction, but I mean, functionally, it's a
I mean,
trap.
you kind of got like traps, like somebody falls into a pit. But if you have monsters hiding, you don't necessarily think of that as a trap. So, I mean, it does distinguish finding and disarming a trap. So we
Yeah.
know that takes care of the mechanical and magical. Uh, and for spotting an ambush, yeah, I guess I answered my own question. It covers them all.
It's
It
in
was kind
there.
of silly.
Yeah.
That's all
And,
right.
Yeah.
and I think that, this is one of they've got all the other kind of thiefy type skills, backstab and sneaking around and hiding and picking locks, finding disabling traps. But I think that this is their mojo condition is like part of the balance consideration for them of going, hey, they may not look that powerful, but they should be getting mojo all the time because as we've been saying, it's their bread and butter. So all the time they should be earning more and more mojo.
The more I think about it, Stefan, I'm kind of tending to agree with you, though. If they fail on that first check, I mean, their intuition just isn't working, I mean, the action's about to start. I mean, I can see giving them another check, but I can also see, like, hey, you already tried, it didn't work. You don't know what's going on.
But I think they have to do something different than just stand still. So they have to either change their target of where they're listening or move. And since it's a movement based skill, I think they have to move. So I wouldn't
I think
allow a
that's a good
second.
call.
I wouldn't allow a second check if they didn't move.
I like
Yeah,
that. I
they got
like
to
that.
come up with a plan.
Yeah.
That check to me represents their best effort in that specific situation.
I think that's a happy medium that we all agreed upon. All right, now we're going to dive into the Crypt Raider, the dungeon diver, the Lara Croft of the specialist class. Lane, if you could bring up question 5 for us. Does a Crypt Raider's Find Secret Doors ability give them a second free check if they are actively searching for secret doors?
Not so fast.
Essentially, 2 checks.
Not so fast,
That's
Indiana.
why I said ability twice.
Yeah. I mean,
Oh, that was
let's debate it, but this is I already like thought this through. It's a free check. And so I'm
right.
thinking how they move up. It's kind of like the old school elf, just naturally you're behind the GM screen rolling to see if they sense a secret door. I think it's that. In fact, this is like Stephanie, you're saying the judge should roll some things. This is something that the judge I think should roll. And then I think if they choose to, if the player that's playing a Crypt Raider says I'd like to check, then they get that. But I think this free check comes because you've got the map, you know what's there. You just roll whenever they're within 10 feet, that kind of thing.
Evan, what do you think?
I'm completely on board. Yes, no, the judge. I totally agree. The judge should roll this because how else is it going to come up? The judge is the only one that knows. The judge, rolls and whatever. And hey, by the way, you notice there's like a little outline in the wall there.
All right. So let's dive into the rules. Elena, if you could bring up 5A, page 44, the Crypt Raider gets a free and automatic check for secret doors just for passing within 10 feet. So there's a little bit of precedence there. They have to be 10 feet within that secret door. And then secret check, the judge would roll for it, I think. I think that's correct. But let's say they go into the room. Stephanie, you enter into a room and there's nothing in it. And you're like, there's got to be something here. I'm going to check for secret doors. So, Charles, you say, okay, check for secret doors. And there is a secret door in that room. So as you're actively checking and rolling, is there 2 checks? Are you making a check while Stefan makes a check?
Wait, I thought you were asking Stefan first, but I think yes.
Okay. No, I'm the player. You're the judge.
Stefan does
I'm
it. Okay.
asking. Yeah,
So,
I'm
yeah,
asking.
I would do
Is
that.
there a secret door here? There is. I don't know it yet. You know there is.
Go ahead and
So
roll for
I
it.
roll for a
Well,
secret
I
door.
also roll for it.
Okay.
Yeah. And if both fail, then they don't know. If mine succeeds, then I say, wow, you're not sure, but you do notice half a footprint against the wall. Where's the other half? Right. So then they get to go investigate it.
Yeah.
I would think 2 checks too. If they're actively searching and that's what they're trying to do, then you roll one and the player rolls one. See if we can find out some more clarification. Elena, hand out 5B if you would, please. Page 67. In general, skill checks are associated with either field of knowledge reflected in the 0-level occupation. Intelligence is listening, recalling facts, searching, and spotting. So I'd say that constitutes a secret door check. Do you give them an intelligence mod when you're making their check?
Absolutely. And their level.
Yeah? And their level?
I think that says it written.
Crypt Raiders add their class level to all attempts to find secret doors. It doesn't say intelligence, though.
But you just proved the point. It's
But
listening.
you said it's an intelligence check.
So,
and unless it's a separate ability, if they're searching, then it's ability they're using. They're using that intuition. If they're using their innate ability, like they just notice things, then it would be more passive.
Ooh, I like that.
I think everyone would get to add their intelligence check, no matter who was looking for it. Some people may be trained, some may not. But I think the Crypt Raider, it is unsaid because it's the norm that everyone gets to add their intelligence modifier to this kind of check. They just, in addition, get to add their class level. That would be my interpretation.
All right, well, I've got an example here for us. Elena, if you can bring up handout 5C. On page 362 in the book, Showdown at Grind City, if they search, they'll eventually notice a secret door hidden behind an advertisement. They're walking down a hall. There's all kinds of advertisements over on the walls, I think, of this hallway. And there's a secret door behind one of them. So I think we already established if they actively are searching, then they're getting 2 checks when they pass by that, right?
Yeah. One from the player, one from the judge.
Yep.
Yeah, this question was so easy. Stefan, what's question number 6?
Number 6.
This one's going to be a little tougher.
Yeah. Does the dark knowledge check allow for a Crypt Raider to know specific abilities and weaknesses for the undead and demons that they identify?
I guess, Charles, tell us a little bit about the dark knowledge check.
Oh, you had me at dark knowledge. I think I'm currently playing a acrobat. So I really love that you're diving into these. I'm currently playing an acrobat, and I'm just kicking myself after looking at this Crypt Raider character, thinking how much more fun this would be. So dark knowledge. I mean, I really think this is drawing a lot from Indiana Jones and that classic, archaeologist archetype, and the kind of ways you can recognize symbols. You speak Latin. You're kind of like being able to really understand how the lore works. So you're a specialist in these undead characters and demons conjured from the depths of hell, and so you're able to understand those characters very well. It doesn't translate to every character, but it's specifically specialized to the undead and to demons. And so they get to learn. They get a plus 1D to the dice chain when they're doing an intelligence check, a knowledge check about those. The information that they get, the same. It's not necessarily super specific about their whereabouts, but it would be about their their knowledge, their strengths and weaknesses. You could also look at a dead body. You stumble across a decimated former adventurer, and you could probably tell this was torn apart by that creature, because you've known and you've studied. And so it gives you a lot of great role-playing opportunities, really. I mean, little bits of clue collecting, but mostly a good role-played piece for both the judge and
it does kind of portray that you've got an extensive knowledge. You're an expert in this forbidden lore. Stefan, if you're making
you roll.
If you're making a dark knowledge check, you get the plus 1D for a knowledge check. Am I adding intelligence to that? It does say it's a knowledge check.
I would certainly say so. Yeah, that sounds like a knowledge check.
All right, and Stefan, do you agree? Like how much information are you given here?
It does depend on like their one, their experience level, how much like in their, lived character in the X crawl arena and out of it have they interacted with these type of creatures, or is it all book learning? And two, yeah, it's going to be dependent on how well they roll there. So, if they get a 10, I'll tell them, oh yeah, this seems like a zombie bite. You can see the necrosis like sinking in, but if they get a 20 on something, you'll be like, actually, it is an undead demon. It is known as, Clargor, the glutton, the cardinal of gluttony. That's what this bite comes from.
All right, Elena, if you could bring up handout 6A. And Crow, do you have the X Crawl book handy?
I have the PDF. I could flip between screens. What do you need me to look up?
Bring up page 327 real quick and just read the highlights on the Disparador. That's going to be our next handout. So I want you to get prepared for that. Should have sent you that, but so handout 6A says, they get a +1D for the check, including forensics checks. To me, that means Like if you're able to identify how someone is killed, you're like a CSI, X crawler. You can figure out that this creature was killed by this claw length of undead, and by that claw length, which undead character it is. So I think they get quite a bit of information. But Stefan, I've got some examples for us.
Right.
So Elaine, if you bring up handout 6B, the Disparator on page 327. The first one is the description. They're minor but dangerous undead, humanoid skulls carved with runes, occasionally painted for effect. They glow with the orange light from within, and their skulls, as if their skulls had an invisible candle. Next point of it, they bray horrible laughter when first encountered. Have to make a willpower save. Next bit of information, they speak to the characters in a voice like wind passing through dead leaves, telling all kinds of horrible lies, trying to bring them down. They have to make a willpower save or take 1 point of personality damage. So, you guys, I'm the Crypt Raider. I'm trying to figure out. I make my dark knowledge check and I get a 12. Stefan, out of that information, what do you give me on a 12?
On a 12, well, what did you find? What did you make the check? Did you find a body? Like, did you hear some of the whisperings? What prompted you?
We're encountering the Disparador in X Crawl for the first time.
Oh,
So
okay.
I guess
It's in the room with you. Fight.
It's in the room. I see it, and I'm like, holy crap! I want to know a little bit about this. Do I know about this creature?
I'm gonna tell you that yeah, it's a undead creature. I'm gonna describe the humanoid skulls, the runes, the light. And I'm going to tell you that you know that this thing it can speak horrible things, and that that if you have some lint or wax that you can plug your ears with really quick, you'll probably do better because you won't be able to hear it as much. And if you did that kind of thing, I'd give you +1D on those willpower saves because the evil whispers and the braying horrible laughter is all muffled.
All right, so Charles, let's say now we got a D20. We've got a crit on our dark knowledge roll. How much information are you giving out of this, and are you reserving any?
I was thinking, Stefan, that's for a 12. That's a lot. I was hoping to reserve some because I knew he was going to ask me that one next. I think I would say all that. I wouldn't require them to guard their ears. Perhaps I'd say they just automatically get a +D to the will save. Maybe if they were clever enough to shout insults back or raise the noise, I might boon that in some way. I think the other piece that I just quickly read in the description is that they're always hired to guard treasure. I would certainly let them know this is indicative that there's treasure near. I think that would
maybe that should have been the DC 12, and they guard treasure, but you don't know about the horrible things that they will do to you. That should have been the higher information level.
I didn't include everything. I just included some highlights. And so, Crow, turn to page 341. I'm gonna give you the next the Empire vampire on what information you're gonna give me on my dark knowledge roll. So page 341, we've got an Empire vampire here.
Oh, I
They're
like vampire.
humanoid
Keep saying that.
nightmares. Why do I keep saying that? Heads of enormous wolves, black furred bodies, inverted knees like werewolves, short, unretractable, scalloped wing flaps that hang between their arms and back, long claws, and glowing red eyes. The other piece of information I picked out is Empire vampires. It's because it's Empire vampire.
Yeah.
Tread lightly with their digitrade, digitrade, digitigrade legs,
Yes,
and
that.
do not breathe nor make sound unless they wish to. They can hide in shadows and sneak silently with a +9 to both checks. Fire does double damage to the Empire vampires. I just picked one of their weaknesses. They have a couple, but this is the information I picked. So if this was all the information, Pro, on a dark knowledge check of 15, what kind of information are you giving me?
All right. There's a lot more that you didn't read. I'm
I
reading all
I
that.
skipped. All
Holy
right.
moly. You said they were flammable, afraid of fire.
I Yeah. So the points are is the
Yeah.
paragraph about how they look, right? They tread lightly. They don't breathe or make sounds unless they want to. They can hide in shadows, and sneak with a +9. And fire does double damage. So on
Yeah.
a
I mean,
15, how much info do you give?
I think I think most characters would want to know a weakness or a vulnerability. They don't necessarily care as much about lore, but we are talking about a crypt raider, so I would have to find a piece of lore, to throw in there, like, they sleep upside down like bats. I mean, something just not something not mechanical, but something kind of just a lore piece, as well as a piece of mechanical info that they can use to, um, to approach them.
All right. Stefan, you got the crit 20 out of that
Oh,
information. Are you telling them that they get +9s? Are you telling them, like, hey, these guys are masters at hiding, sneaking?
yeah.
They've got a bonus that's 3 times yours.
I'd probably, this is what it is. It's an Empire vampire. They're insanely, yeah. I almost said energy vampire or something like that. I'm not sure what I almost said. But it does make you trip up a little bit. Yeah, I'd tell them
Doesn't
what
roll
they
off the
are.
tongue.
I'd tell them that they're, insanely sneaky, and I'd tell them a weakness. On a 20, I think, you can get a definition, one of their strengths, and one of their weaknesses.
And there was a lot more to the Empire Vampire. Those are just the points that I picked out. And so, I mean, I guess, what we're saying, though, is with the Dark Knowledge roll, they're going to have some kind of intense knowledge about whatever this creature might be if they succeed.
Yeah.
What is there a DC for that? There's not a DC.
There's
What do
not
you
a
set the
DC.
DC at?
I mean, the 5, 10, 15, 20 for, varying levels of information. Just go with the basics on that and not reinventing the wheel.
All right.
Same.
Well, another exciting thing, Crow, is how does disapproval work for a crypt raider? A crypt raider, a specialist, a thief, can turn undead, turn unholy.
It's funny that you said that because it should just be turn undead, because it says turn unholy in the script, but then it really like breaks it down into it's only undead, and it works pretty much the same way we understand from clerics or messengers. But
It says undead and demons.
right. But it's not just anything unholy.
Mm.
It's limited. But what's different is if they earn disapproval, so you track disapproval the same way. So every failed check increases the disapproval range. But then if they hit that range, then they have to spend an hour per point in what the text says is prayer or meditation. But gosh, I wish it said study. I think it just makes more sense for this character that it would be, oh gosh, I got to go study. What book is that? And where's that? They've got the X World version of Grey's Anatomy in there, and they're gonna, or angels, demons, and beings in between. Maybe they've got their version of that. And they got to go look at it and figure it out. So.
That's a
That's
great
really
point.
that's really inconvenient to have to spend an hour per point. Let's say you've got 4 points of disapproval. That's 4 hours you can't use it again. You can't use your main thing again. That's pretty harsh.
Yeah, you're done for the crawl. I think if
Right.
you're just done for it. But
And
I
so,
agree with you.
Stefan,
I feel like study would be more appropriate here. They gotta, I gotta bone up on where's my copy of Forgotten Rites of the Moldering Dead?
Because otherwise, it's
and
too
so,
much like a cleric, and they're not really
yeah,
clerics.
they definitely aren't. They are, knowledge based.
Yeah.
But Stefan, speaking of, it does say undead and demons. Do extra unholy creatures count? Do dire animals and elementals and
Not for these
lawful
guys.
extraplanar creatures?
Nah.
So it really shouldn't. Should it say something else besides turn unholy?
I think we're still saying turn unholy because that's the mechanic that we're used to. And you want to have it say the same thing for when you have those items and those spells that say, and this gets a plus bonus, +1 to turn unholy. You don't want it to be like asterisks and also this thing. That's for reference material, even though thematically it is a little bit different with this class.
And so, Crow, as we understand disapproval, you roll on the disapproval chart. Your deity, your god is pissed off, and you've got some reparations to make. For this one, not so. Do we roll on the disapproval chart or no?
Nope.
It's just studying. It's just prayer and meditation.
Yep.
All right. So let's say they
It's
must
summer
spend.
school. It's detention.
So equal to their disapproval score. So let's say if their disapproval's at a 5, they have to spend 5 hours before they can do turn unholy again.
They got to go down to Arkham Library, and figure out what this creature's weakness is, and yeah.
Stefan, is there any cause for, let's say I rolled a 4, which is 1 under 5. Is there any cause for saying it's 1 hour of disapproval study? Because, we would roll 1d4 for the disapproval, however many it is underneath.
No, I think whatever your number of D4s equal up to, that's how many hours you got to do. I mean, either way, it's really not a big deal how many hours it is, because however many, it's after the crawl.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's 1 hour, you're pretty much locked out of turned unholy for the rest of the event. All right, well, let's jump on to our next question about the Crypt Raider. This is one of my favorite abilities ever. Lane, if you could bring up question 8. Crow, can a Crypt Raider backstab an undead enemy? We've been conditioned. Stefan, I've played in Stefan's game where I roll a 20, and he's like, no. It's an undead.
See, this Dungeon Denizens 2 thing that's going on pretty cool. I submitted a couple undead creatures and I got back, some development feedback from Mike Curtis saying, I don't know where this rumor started that undead can't be crit. That is not a universal rule. Some can, some can't. It depends on the type of undead. So.
Really?
Yeah. So, because I was putting, immunities for the couple undead creatures I have in there. So, undead can be crit. It just, a skeleton, no. Probably not so much. I mean, maybe you could crush that skull, Hey, there's an argument to be made. But other kinds, sure.
Yeah, I thought so as well. Charles, what do you think?
Yeah, my answer is yes, especially in the context of as written here. And the fact that you can crit or you can backstab with holy water is the coolest thing. That you can throw a vial of holy water at the back of a skeleton, and it does make sense that the holy water would actually get into it more because it has no skin or vital organs, and it just splashes all over the thing and takes it out and does more damage. So I thought it was a pretty cool feature. It's also why I think I like this Crypt Raider subclass a lot. And they get up the dice chain on the crit table.
Yeah, let's look
when
at
they
that.
hit. So that's like it's an automatic crit as a backstab. If the backstab's successful, then on the crit table they get to go up the dice chain for that per their normal crit dice. So that's pretty awesome.
And Lena, if you could bring up handout AA for us. Crypt Raiders can score a critical hit against any undead creature or demon, even if its description specifies and immunity to critical hits. And then handout 8B, Crypt Raiders roll plus 1d on their critical check on a successful backstab, and they roll on crit table 3. So that is a heavy hit when I thought we couldn't do crits at all to Undead. I'll tell you the truth. I thought that was a rule as well.
I think where it comes from is it specifies vital organs when it talks about the backstab feature.
There's also some undead that say it in like their description, but not all. So I don't know.
You could argue that, you know, a hellhound probably still has vital organs.
Is a hellhound undead? Well, it's demonic.
It depends on your type of hellhound.
Yes.
I'll say we got to get moving. I think we've wrapped this one up. They can definitely backstab an undead enemy.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Last question for the Crypt Raider. What is the Crypt Raider's individual mojo earning condition, Cro?
Turning undead or killing any undead or demons. So it's their basic bread and butter. It's what they do best. So if they turn or kill an undead or a demon, they earn a mojo.
All right. And then Elena, let's hand out 9A if you could bring that up. And there are some other abilities that they have, so make sure you take a look at that Crypt Raider. But Stefan, let's dive into question 10.
Yeah. I'll say, that Crypt Raider luck ability is so cool.
That was the thing I had on my asterisk, is like, that is...
But y'all better get your X-Crawl book out. Read the rules yourself.
Yeah.
Question 10, Dwarven Mechanic. What weapons are they trained in?
The usual dwarf weapon, plus hand axe. Oh.
Are you sure? That's why I asked this question. Under weapons training, it says dwarf mechanics additionally learn to fight with a hand axe along with their specialist weapon proficiencies. Now, previously above that, it says the dwarf has no talents associated with the dwarf class. So no shield bash, deed die. Stefan, do you include weapon training amongst those skills and talents?
I would... You know, I think I would not include the Dwarven weapon training. I think I would have them be the specialist weapons plus the hand axe as stated.
I think that's what I was thinking as well, but it was kind of confusing because I was like, well, what is the dwarf's weapon specialized? All it tells us is that it's the hand axe. Elena, if you could bring up handout 10A, it talks about them knowing that the hand axe is a specialist. And then it says, along with their specialist weapon proficiencies. And so I was like, well, what are the specialist weapon proficiencies? Bring up handout 10B. Generalized specialists are trained to fight with short swords, daggers, slings, short bows, and hand crossbows. So I think that would be where it is. Because there is definitely that separation between X-Crawl, Dwarf Mechanic, and regular Dwarf. What do you think, Cro?
And think in terms of the lore, these are not well liked by their own people. So who's going to teach them the dwarven ways? Right? So if you think of it that way, then yes, you're limited to the specialist because you couldn't get the training from your people, so that you had to go find the training from your thievy type, specialist type. So I like that. I agree with you.
All right, Stefan will hit us with the next one.
For sure. What modifiers does the dwarf mechanic get to use for find and disable traps?
I like this. It's a slight flavor on that underground knowledge. They get a sense of, you know, anything that would have been used in stonework, I think. So digging a pit, you know, any sort of, you know, deadfall trap, anything like in a swung door, anything like that. They get up the dice chain, so they get a boost up the dice chain. I love how Brendan really leaned into the dice chain in this so much more, and I love it. I try to do it as much in my games too.
And Elena, if you could bring up handout 11A for us. Dwarf mechanics are plus 1d to find and disable traps that involve pits, stonework, sliding walls, structural deadfalls, whether above or below ground. And then handout 11B, that is our page 51. That's our specialist skills by specialty again. And so we can see the find trap has the cross there, which means it's modified by intelligence. And the disable trap has the asterisk, which means it's modified by agility. So Stefan, if I'm specialist, a dwarven mechanic, finding a trap. I'm rolling a d24 plus first level. Let's say first level.
Yeah.
First level. What am I rolling, Stefan?
On find trapped, first level, yeah, D24 plus 3 from your bonus there, plus your personality? Oh no, I'm misreading that. Plus your intelligence modifier.
Intelligence
So
mod.
you're
So
gonna I mean, you could be a dummy, but theoretically you're getting a really good roll even at first level.
So I calculated it out, and if you've got a +1 intelligence or agility mod, then you're going to be finding and disabling these traps. If it's above a 10, 75% of the time. Because all you have to do is get a 6, and then you're getting a +4.
As long as it's a trap that involves stonework of some kind.
True.
So, you know, your swinging bear trap pendulum, not so much.
Charles, is that a game breaker? Being able to get, find and disable traps 75% of the time?
No, not at all. For the exact same reason Stefan pointed out. It's that trap makers know who's coming into their X crawls. So they're going to design things with such brilliant diversity that no one class or no one subclass can break their game.
Okay. All right, Stefan, let's dive into these last two questions.
Yep. Next up, does the dwarf mechanic know their own approximate underground depth or the depth of gems and gold?
Yes and no. So yes to the first one. When underground, they kind of always have an approximation of the depth, but no, they're not loot sniffers like traditional dwarves.
I beg to differ, sir.
Okay.
Now, you are a teacher and a scholar, correct? If you look at page 45, Elaine, if you bring up a handout 12A for us, as written, dwarf mechanics cannot detect gems or gold by scent, but they always know their approximate depth underground. That there can only refer to gems and gold as it's written. I think as intended, it's their being, their dwarfness. But am I right? Oh,
Yeah. So we don't we don't use APA writing rubrics for anything Dungeon Crawl Classics. So technically, yes, the pronoun references to the direct noun before it. And so, yes, you would be right in arguing that, but boy, that would slow down a table. Just let the judge say no. They're trying to make a distinction between old dwarves and these dwarves because these dwarves in this universe haven't lived underground the same way old dwarves, Tolkien's dwarves have done. So I don't know. I lean towards they don't get to smell gems and gold.
I think so as well. Stefan, what do you think? What the underground? Yeah. They know their approximate depth underground. Is that referring to the dwarf or the gems or the gold?
It really could. You could argue both, and it wouldn't really feel wrong either way that you argued. So it's hard to say. I feel like the intent, though, is that the dwarf knows how deep the dwarf is underground.
I think so as well.
Brendan,
all right. Well, that leaves us with our last question, Stefan. What do we got?
Yeah. Last up, what's their mojo earning condition?
Can I swear on the show?
No.
Okay. I'm glad I asked because there's a way in which you talk, smack about the trap makers, and I would at the table say that that's their ability is that smack. Let's call it smack talking the trap makers right after figuring out their secrets. That's how they earn mojo. I absolutely love this for a role play treat. And especially they could even get extra mojo if it's a particularly scathing insult.
Yeah.
So, Stefan, there's
one
a
of the
lot
most
of
narrative, mojos, that really encourages the theme. They also get mojo for helping destroy giants, trolls, and ogres. So there's that
I'd love
as
to
well.
ask Brendan where that comes from. Like why those three? That's fascinating.
I think the folklore of things, but yes, I love this mojo earning.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of potential there because at a 75%, positive success rate, there's a lot of opportunity to turn to the camera and talk a lot of smack.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I do find that as we're getting along, that some classes really can get a lot more mojo potential earning conditions, and others are kind of limited. Like, the scout, if there's no ambushes or traps that they find, it's going to be hard for them to get any kind of mojo.
Yeah.
I think the onus is on the judge to consider who is playing their game and to make the game for their group.
Yeah.
Now,
Themselves as the judge included.
what if you're at a convention though, and you've just got a bunch of pre-gens there? You don't know what you're going to get.
Uh, I mean, the judge should know which pregens that they're handing out and have prepared the correct kind of pregens.
I was going to say the
All
same
right.
thing. I'm very careful about picking the pregens to make sure that the spell list is appropriate for the adventure they're going to go through. Can I squeak in one more asterisk on my notes?
Of
Sure.
course,
Okay,
absolutely.
so the dwarf mechanic is the only specialist class that has thieves' cant. All the other specialists don't have that, but the dwarf mechanic has this, again, a cool role play opportunity, but possibly not very useful. But they actually have this really sophisticated way of, kind of speaking hobo uh, clues and languages, and I don't know. I thought that was pretty special. That was pretty cool.
Well, it's even more in depth than just regular thieves can't, right? Like it's a whole guttural art language that's a combination of like three or four languages and hand signals,
Yeah.
if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's pretty.
I just
You know,
don't
so
know,
so many of the
when would you
specialist
ever use
classes
that.
make me want to play a game that's a bunch of different kinds of specialists, and you never go in an X crawl arena. It's all just street level crime stuff.
Well, I mean, you might
That it,
somebody out there, third party publisher, might decide to write an X crawl arena designed specifically for this feat, and there's all kinds of clues written in graffiti all over the place, and and then this particular class can be like the party lead, man, the person who figures out so much of the stuff. That would be kind of fun.
maybe a father-daughter duo from Death Guaranteed Games.
Oh my gosh, we have so many projects queued up. I don't think I can talk about anything until 2027.
All right, well, speaking of projects, tell us what you got coming down next.
So I'm still working on fulfillment. Backer Kit's a learning curve, as you both know, and I'm still trying to figure out how to dump the PDFs. They're finalized. In the success of it, I decided to go back and add to it, and I wrote a patron write up for Papa Legba, my deity character that's in there, and it's some of my best writing ever. I'm so excited to share it with people and have them get that so they can use it in their games. But my writing buddy Paul Keller, he's Dominion 451 online. Most people have played in Gamers Playing with him or on Discord. He was inspired to write a module with his kid. So the cover art is by his kid. We're working on that one next. We're probably going to launch it Memorial Day weekend. I've been working this morning to make sure that the pledge levels and the stories look good. So if you guys do drop a link to it, people can check it out and they actually have something to look at. They can click on the launch page and follow that project. I got one more to plug too. This is pretty exciting.
We do have a link that Elena's put in chat, and I mistakenly said founder of Death Guaranteed Games, but your co-founder, is he your other co-foundee?
Yeah, we actually have three of us. We decided that we needed a deal breaker too. So this guy that runs games at my FLGS, he's one of the best judges I've ever played with. I'm so lucky. He reminds me why it's good as a judge to be a player often, so you could really get to experience how other people run games. And so Mark Anderson goes by Judge Shadowfoot. He's our third, and the three of us are working together to make everything kind of collaborative. It slows some things down, but it also really enriches a lot of stuff because we give each other great feedback. So um, I'm the one who came up with the name and fought for it. I thought Death Guaranteed Games was just a cool thing, and then when we say that we're DGG, it kind of invokes DCC a bit. So it's pretty fun. We're having a lot of fun thinking about the future, thinking about things we're going to do. We ran into a guy that plays at the Strategicon convention. He's out at Gong Farmers Local 951 out in Murrieta. Shout out to Judge Ike. he approached me, and he's got a Shutter Mountains campaign that he wants to publish through Death Guaranteed Games. So we're working on that sometime, probably shooting for DCC Day in July. So we're working on some stuff. We've got
All right.
artists
And
scrambling to get stuff filled, and
was
it's
that
pretty.
the other thing you were going to tell us about? I kind of cut you off there, but
That was it. I snuck it in.
all right.
Very
So we
cool.
should have links to all your works in the chat, so everybody can check those out. Stefan, you had a birthday party, a new roof. What else? Well, you got all kinds of stuff going on.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to my hotel since my house is being repaired and color some VTT tokens tonight for the Foundry supplement of the Conquest of Chaos, and work continues.
All right. Well, the House of Enshadar, the final artwork just came in from Andy Edmonds, Nerdronomicon. It looks great. So I will be giving those out in the update. I was in a 6-car pileup on I-35 coming out of San Antonio. And so my truck got trashed. The frame is bent. So I'm having to deal with the insurance companies, the lawyers, the doctors, all that nonsense. Absolutely. Uh, so anyway, it is all. I mean, everybody was safe though, so
All right, hey, blessed for that.
Elena, I noticed that we never ask you what you got going on. Elena, what do you got going on? What can you tell us?
Oh,
Well, you tell us, and we'll relay it to them.
all right.
Oh, really?
Ooh, we can't tell them that.
Oh my
So
gosh.
spicy.
No.
Honestly, nothing going on is very exciting.
And that's what we're gonna tell them.
We could use a little bit
All
of
right.
nothing going
Wow.
on.
Well, I have to go. We need to log off so I can just pray for you for hours, I think.
Charles, Judge Cro, thanks for coming on. You guys can find Judge Cro on the Dungeon Crawler server, Death Guaranteed Games. Check it out. Check out those links. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks' time, April 22nd.
Bye, everybody.